Good afternoon to you. It is Friday, September 27th at 4:06 p.m. Sure, cut out a little early. B. Dowd gives you permission. Take it off. It's pretty much the weekend. Hope you are doing well. If you're in the office, if you're at home, enjoying a home office like I do. Chris Harder's here already. Chris Harder has an incredible schedule. He's a bus driver, as many of you know this. Drives the big buses in the sky. So how are you, Chris? Hope you're well. I was going to look a little bit at what Purdue has ahead for Nebraska. If you saw the thumbnail, you can see I don't have the best feeling about this game as we head into it. It's going to be just like it is today, gray and windy and rainy in God's country, but at least it won't be cold. So of that, we can deal with that. We're going to talk about all the factors, all the statistics. You're going to get inundated with statistics today because you've already heard gut feelings from me for a couple weeks. Let's talk about stats. But before we do it, before we dig in, do me a favor. If you're in town, maybe tonight you're going to Mackey Arena so you can watch the full feature-length film created by the good, smart, handsome, beautiful creatives in Purdue's athletic department about the basketball season, about basketball, the 2023-24 basketball season, of course, ended in Phoenix. If you're going to be there, if you're going to be in God's country this weekend for the game, head towards the fire station. And then if you're coming from Mackey, this is easy. Head towards the fire station. You can turn left, and you're going to see those blue lights at AJ's. Go inside, have a seat, enjoy the televisions, and get some pretzels, maybe get a mac and cheese bite, and then feast. Just absolutely feast. If you want to order ahead, eatajs.com. Great service, but it's burgers, beef, and beer. That's AJ's. And of course, if you need a t-shirt, a sweatshirt, a hat, you're looking for a platinum pack that's got some swag to it, go to homefieldapparel.com. Enter Boiled25 at checkout. Get 15% off your first order. They've got that classic gear. You're going to love it. If you want to get something to grow your wardrobe like Jay and Anish recently did, you don't have to stay in the Purdue family. You can go outside and get some stuff that's a little bit more off the beaten path. That's pretty fun. Homefieldapparel.com. Good people there too. So how do you feel about tomorrow? I can tell you I don't feel great. And then when I started digging into the statistics, I felt worse. The reason I think Murderer's Row is here a little bit early, let's look at the schedule, shall we? It looked like a couple of weeks ago, or coming into the season at least, that maybe, just maybe, the schedule, the difficulty of the schedule wouldn't come till about the middle. But now all of a sudden you've got Nebraska and Illinois both look like really good teams on the field. Wisconsin is struggling. But this next 4 games right here, to me, define the whole thing, if you ask me. Maybe if you go the next 5, you can get into another thing philosophically. But you got Nebraska, Wisconsin, Illinois, Oregon. Then Northwestern before Ohio State and Penn State. Finally, a bit of reprieve at Michigan State before the bucket game at IU. The schedule somehow looks scarier than it did at the beginning of the season because Nebraska is really, really good in spite of dropping one versus Illinois that they shouldn't have dropped, where they had the whole game. They had it in their hand, and Illinois toughed it out. Illinois is now ranked 19th. Nebraska and Illinois look tough. This is Murderer's Row. If you look at that thumbnail, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's scary out there, guys, boys and girls. Purdue's got to face a really, really good young gun in Dylan Raiola. If you don't know his history, he was one of the best quarterback recruits in America. He was going to Georgia, and he decided to change his commitment over to heading to Lincoln. And it's been a pretty good deal for both sides. Raiola right now is 4th in passing in the league, averages 241 yards a game, 8 TDs on the season, just 2 picks. Compare and contrast that to Purdue's vet quarterback, Hud Card. You've got 151 yards a game, 6 touchdowns, not awful. Patted up a little bit versus Indiana State, 3 picks. Hudson's completing not too shabby, 64%. But Raiola, 72% completion percentage. So the passing offense from Nebraska is pretty darn good, right? So do you think Nebraska will be passing a lot? Let's look at that. Let's dig in a little bit deeper. Nebraska's passing offense, a very efficient passing attack. They're only 8th in the conference. 261.8 yards a game because Raiola hasn't had to take all the snaps. Nebraska has been ahead by a lot, and a couple games this year, and Purdue's pass defense is actually pretty darn good. If you're just looking at the stats, you're like, wow, that passing defense, third in the conference for your Boilermakers, pretty good, right? So you feel maybe if Purdue can, keep the guys in front of them, maybe they can force Nebraska into a little bit of difficulty. But does Nebraska even have to throw a pass? Let's dig a little bit deeper into these stats. Purdue is 18th in rush defense. And this was Nate Baird and Sam King talked about this on their podcast this week. This is the most eye-popping stat. Of a bunch of bad stats I'm going to talk to you about for a second, this is the worst one. Purdue is 18th in the conference in rushing defense. And how close are they to number 17th? Well, USC is 106 yards better in yards allowed per game on the ground. Let that sink in for a second. 106-yard differential between Purdue and the number 17 rush defense in the conference. I think that's the whole story this season. Everything else you can say could be worked on and get better. But this scheme, can you stop anybody on the ground? And it sure as hell looks like not, especially if they have a quarterback that's at all mobile, and Nebraska does. Does Nebraska have the scheme that they'll allow him to run the option? Because if they do, holy moly, if there's a thing such as kryptonite for a defense as bad as Purdue, the option is it. Purdue doesn't know how to stop it. They couldn't stop it versus Notre Dame. They couldn't stop it versus Oregon State at all. Let's look at some positives for a second. And you're going to say, those aren't very positive, B. Dowd. But let's look at the positives. Okay, I'm going to start real positive. Purdue is 7th in the league in rushing yards per game with 183. And Maccabee's 8th in the league in yards per carry, 7.7 yards per carry. Pretty awesome. 92 yards a game for Maccabee. He's having a solid season. Sadly, he's only rushed the ball 12 times a game. And the reason he's in that situation, the reason Purdue's offense is in that situation, is obviously because Purdue is always trying to fight and claw their way back in the game because of the deficit. Except for the Indiana State game, Purdue's been down in those other two, and down by quite a bit. So that's the good news. It gets worse from here. Purdue is 13th in points scored a game. Purdue is 13th in yards of offense total a game, 354 yards, 26 points and 354 yards. It's 13th in the league. And then 15th in passing yards per game, 171 passing yards a game. And then it starts getting bad, and it's going to get bad from here. So buckle up, boys and girls. Purdue is 18th in total first downs a game. And this one is really glaring. They only have 15 yards or 15 first downs a game. And that's with that Indiana State game in there. The Indiana State game, Purdue's offense was incredibly efficient, just kind of picked apart. But this stat to me, if you want to look on the offensive side, the one that's most telling, this 18th in the league with just 15 first downs a game, this is the one that gets you. As a fan, this is the one that might really bother you and haven't been able to put your finger on it. Why does it bother you? Because you're a Purdue fan. And if you're older than, let's say 30, 35, you remember a time when Purdue would march down the field on teams. 1, 2, 3, 4, first down. Well, that chant is almost not needed anymore. Purdue does not march down the field on anybody. Purdue does not sustain a drive. Purdue's offense is bad, but it's not as bad as the defense. It's not as bad as the defense. Let's look a little deeper at this. A couple. I've already told you the damning stat for rushing. Rush defense is really awful. Okay. Another bad stat. Purdue is 18th in points allowed. Purdue is 18th in total yards allowed. Purdue is 18th in turnover margin. And speaking of turnovers created, Purdue has created 0 turnovers on the season. They haven't picked up a fumble off the ground. They haven't intercepted a pass. So I read these stats and I was like, yeah, is it this bad? As bad as our eyes have seen? Is it bad as emotional as I've gotten this season during these games? It's worse. Somehow it's worse. And so I know we talked about data points and stuff like that during the Handsome Hour 2 weeks ago. And this week we said, yeah, they're not very good. But the story, every story you look at is lousy. Even the ones that are somewhat positive are lousy. So in that turnovers created, Purdue was 0. The 17th best team in the league, Wisconsin, which is shocking that Wisconsin's way down here. They average just under 1 turnover created a game, 0.7. So they've actually done a couple things, right? This is the thing that's so unbelievable, is the amount of struggling this team has all over the field. Offense, defense. Only thing they seem to do well is running the ball. But again, some podcasts, some Purdue sports types have reminded us, Oregon State's rushing defense is absolutely horrendous. One of the worst run defenses in America. Purdue gashed them. I do think my eyes are telling me that Purdue's actually pretty solid at running the ball, except for when they play Notre Dame. But who the hell knows, right? If Purdue plays a team with, I don't know, a big, sturdy defensive line and a really decent scheme, like, say, Nebraska, will they be able to move the ball at all? I don't know. Purdue has so much to change in so little time, week in, week out. As we see at this point, none of the schemes work. Not on offense, not on defense, not the play calling. And the funny thing is, as bad as I think the offense is, which the offense is very bad, the defense, under the tutelage of a defensive guru, is absolutely pitiful. I don't know if I have anything else to say, and I don't think I can get any more sunshiny than this awful weather. Tomorrow it's going to be 75. So like I said, that's nice. It's warm. 30-mile-per-hour gusts and rainy. So if you're going to say maybe something could be positive, can you spin it some way? You can spin it this way. It's going to be hard to move the ball through the air for both teams, both Nebraska and Purdue, because of that wind, because of that rain. The rain will be off and on. It looks like it's going to start raining around 1, according to National Weather Service. And then it'll rain off and on for the rest of the game. It's not going to be that bad. We've been through worse games, but the wind is going to be tough. And the wind, if you look outside in central Indiana, it's pretty tough. Nebraska is 14th in rushing offense. And is that a product of them not being able to run the ball? Or is that an issue more that they just choose to pass the ball? I guess we'll find out, because they're going to run the ball. They're going to run the ball over and over and over. They're going to use the option. They're going to use option reads. They're going to use RPOs. All the things that Purdue has struggled, you're going to see it over and over and over. And it won't just be this game. It's going to be on repeat for the remainder of the season. All right, so let's talk. A couple of you guys are live. Really appreciate you being here. God bless you for backing our Boilers this deep into the season. Chris Harder, aloha to you as well. Greg McManus says hello. Continues, says, no Greg in person tomorrow. Well, this is a heartbreaker. Kid is road tripping with friends to Ross. Hey, that's cool. That's good. It's good news. He says, I think I made a good choice just based on the weather forecast. You're a tough guy, Greg. I think you could take that. I think the harder thing is dealing with the fallout, living in Lincoln next week. But my guess is this Purdue team is pretty lousy. I don't think we're going to see any improvement this week. They may just kind of, is this worse? They're not going to be mean to you. They may just kind of pity you and say, it's all right, fella. Chin up. Maybe they will. I don't know. Maybe they won't, because they know your reputation far and wide out in Lincoln. Good luck with that, Greg. Todd Singer says, good afternoon. Stay dry out there. Yeah, it is no doubt. It's not a deluge now, but it's gonna be wetter tomorrow. Karen Grulock says, happy weekend, BD. Same to you, Karen. Andy Day says, cheers, everyone. Start drinking now. The game might be as painful, might not be that as painful that way. Well, for me, I think I've told you my philosophy about drinking. I'm going to enjoy the pregame, but this week it's we're going to have breakfast burritos. That's what we're doing. That's what LBD and his pals and CBD as well. I like to call him NBD. I think that's better. No big deal. But anyway, call them what you want. I don't know if breakfast burritos are enough to make the pain go away. So we'll find out. Karen Grulock continues. Nebraska has some significant injuries, I think. They do. But as we saw versus Notre Dame, Nebraska is similar to Notre Dame in that even when the program's down, which they are not down, make no bones about it, but when the program's down, they still have talent. They still have good pipelines. They've got players, no doubt about it. Boilers 012 says, slip and slide special at Ross-Ade. Go Boilers. Here's to everyone staying healthy. Yeah, this is one of those games that it's going to be hard to keep your feet. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's a good point. Greg Manis, remember, 8th in the conference is now top half of the conference. This is a very good point. So everything's good. I think you're right. So yeah, you get up to 7th in the conference in rushing yards. Well, let's have a party. I agree. Andy Day says 106 per game is ridiculous, no doubt. Boilers 012 says, hey, at least Purdue is in the top 20 in something this year. Guess the glass is half full from that perspective. That's good. Pat Kennedy says, B-Dowd, keep the good work up. I'm afraid it will be a long season. Time to fire some assistant coaches. Yeah, I've been told by, it's funny. Like I said, I don't regret any of my assessment thus far. And the reason I don't regret my assessment is that I've been proven that my feeling on Graham Harrell last season looks like it's true, sadly. And if I can tell you this much, like somebody said, Graham Harrell's mom's watching, Graham Harrell's wife. Graham's had a great life. Graham's a good dude. Graham is not a good offensive coordinator at Purdue. And I don't know what excuse we can say other than things are what they are. And this is not the product we were sold this summer. If you listen to the coaches and if you looked at the guys on paper, this product is not. We have totally been switched, bait and switched. Major problems, but you can't fire anybody in the middle of the season. There's nobody to take the place. So something needs to be done. Some accountability needs to be had, but we're not going to see it anytime soon. Andy Day says, good thing our error raid doesn't throw the ball. That's a very good point. Very comfortable running the ball, and the error raid is they're not comfortable slinging it around. So yeah, this will be like comfort food. Pat Kennedy says Purdue has better corn than in Nebraska. That's positive. Yeah, I agree. There's nothing like Indiana sweet corn in August. I agree. Michael says, hey, everybody, how are you doing? Hey, Greg, Boilers, Patrick. Just saying hi to everybody. Good to see you, Michael. Glad you're here. Well, that's about all I have. This is a legit QuickCast, and it is under 20 minutes, and I'm going to call it a day. But I just wanted I'll be honest. The reason I wanted to do the QuickCast today was I just love the concept of the thumbnail. And I started doing some AI searches and cobbling this thing together. And when I put the 15 on the chest of the scary Nebraska football player standing in the way of the tracks of your Boilers, I thought it was funny. And I said, okay, because I sent it out to a couple friends, but I said, okay, here's the scene. If you're going to do a horror movie scene, here's the whole scene. Picture yourself on an old steam locomotive, okay? The train derails and it goes off the tracks into a ravine. It's a bad scene. The remaining crew and the few passengers that were on, they say, well, we got to get to town. Let's start walking. So they get back on the tracks and they start heading across that big, dark, scary ravine. They think the worst is behind them because they got to cross that ravine in spite of the fall potentially to their death beneath them. They cross that ravine. And then when they get on the other side of the ravine, what they see is these scary opponents ahead. You've got corn huskers. You've got a half badger guy, scary badgers. Badgers are very scary. You've got a fighting Illini. Chief Illiniwek is there. And of course, a terrifying duck, a mean duck with its big teeth and the blood dripping from its mouth. That's the stuff of horror movies. And that's what Purdue has to deal with right now in the next 4 weeks. And then after that, they get Northwestern. I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to say it now. If Purdue does what I think they're going to do in the next 4 games, those 4 games, that Northwestern game is the second Alamo of the season. The first one was the Alamo of, can you judge this season successful? Go get the Oregon State win and then start ticking off a couple victories, right? But the second Alamo is the one that I would say this coaching staff really ought to take note of. Northwestern's not a good team. If you can't handle your business at Northwestern at home in what I would say should be the real homecoming, just because it's an opponent that I like that more. So I'm going to pretend Northwestern is the homecoming, even though it'd be deep in the season for homecoming. That game's the second Alamo, and this time it's not for a competitive season. It's for this coaching staff in general. You better damn well win that game, because the odds of winning another game after that, Michigan State, IU, by the way, if you look at IU, and I give them nothing but props, what they've done this season. We've seen it before where they've beaten bad teams, but they are in the top of categories over and over and over if you are into that sort of thing. And then when you watch them with your 2 eyes, which I have, they look awfully good. I'm not taking anything away from Indiana right now. Greg McManus says, on assistants, I'd like to think the inability to adapt to the talent they have is inexperience. But Harrell has been around college coaching for a bit. Same for Kane. Yep. No argument at all. The lack of adjustments is painful. Let's see. Andy Day says, have a great weekend, be Dowd. Mohill 93 says, well, this was a bad time to join. Yeah, it was worse earlier, Mohill. Gotta tell you more. It's been worse in this show alone. And it's the subject is a little dark right now. Michael says, I have to ask, are all the home games sold out for this season? No, not technically, Michael. I believe there are a few hundred tickets left for some games. But what happens sometimes is some tickets will be returned to the athletic department by the opposing team, and that could still happen for multiple reasons, right? If the game is either like that team doesn't do well, they can send some tickets back. So sometimes the week of a game, some tickets will pop up. But I believe you have 2 or 3 games left with tickets officially, maybe 4 games. No, they'd only be 2 or 3 games because they're already. Oh, this is game 3. So I think there are 2 games left with tickets. So they're not complete sellouts, but there's not a lot of seats available. If you go on the official, the ticket office website, there's not a lot of tickets. If you even go on Vivid Seats, there's still not a lot of tickets. And last time I checked, they weren't super cheap either. The Nebraska game, I mean, I think you could get out of there for like $45 2 days ago, including fees and everything. I guess that's not horrible. Jay was telling me I'm too cheap because I was looking for another ticket for a member of my family. But might get easier as the season progresses. Pat Kennedy says, hate to say it, Coach Walt hired many of the coaches that are his buddies, does not have the balls to fire assistant coaches. I'm not going to get into that. And I would say if firings should be made, and we haven't seen this test in front of Babinski, but I believe the athletic director should be involved. Maybe it's too early in the season in his opinion to start forcing the hand of a coach, and I understand that idea. Let him do his job. Let him do his job. It's only year 2. I get that, but boy, oh boy, is it bad. All right, 22 minutes, and that's it. Hammer down. God bless you. I hope if you're listening to this, it's after the game. You're on the way home from Ross-Ade. You're on delay, and you just tuned into the Believe Network for your favorite podcast, and you was like, darn nabbit, Boiler Dowd is so wrong about so many things. This offense and defense looked pretty darn good today. That's what I hope we're all saying on the way home from Ross-Ade, or we'll say something like, man, that the weather was detrimental for both sides and Purdue just was tough, just a tougher team. Sometimes that's it. You need a gut check to get you back, get right. But I would be shocked if Nebraska is a get right game for Purdue in 2024. They're too damn good, in my opinion. Nebraska's legit. Purdue is legitimately bad. Hammer down. God bless you. Talk to you soon. See ya.